Your Excellency, was papal infallibility invented in 1870? No. Vatican I defined what the Church had believed since the Apostles. Your Excellency, why was papal infallibility defined only in 1870? Because the Church defines ancient truths only when they are seriously challenged. Your Excellency, what happened at the First Vatican Council? It defined an ancient doctrine, it did not invent one.
Was the dogma of papal infallibility a heresy and a 19th century fabrication? Examining the scriptural and historical roots of the 1870 definition. To argue that papal infallibility was a 19th century fabrication or a heresy is to misunderstand the historical development of Christian doctrine. From the strict standpoint of Catholic theology and history, the First Vatican Council in 1870 did not invent a new power or forge a new piece of faith. Rather, it solemnly defined a reality that had been continuously believed, practiced, and defended since antiquity. The historical proof versus the fabrication claim. In Catholic theology, a dogma is defined only when an ancient truth is directly challenged or needs absolute formal clarification. The roots of papal infallibility stretch back centuries before 1870 through three distinct layers of evidence. 1. Scriptural foundations. The doctrine is built directly on the explicit promises of Christ in the Gospels, indicating a unique protection granted to Peter to preserve the objective truth of the faith. Matthew 16:18. You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. If the visible head of the church could formally bind the entire church to a lie or a heresy, the gates of hell would indeed prevail against it. Luke 22:32. Christ tells Peter, I have prayed for you that your faith may not fail, and when you have turned again, strengthen your brethren.
Your Excellency, why was papal infallibility defined only in 1870? Because the Church defines ancient truths only when they are seriously challenged.
2. The ancient Church, the first millennium. Long before 1870, the early Church Fathers and the ancient ecumenical councils acted upon the operational reality of papal infallibility. St. Irenaeus of Lyons, circa 180 AD. In his work against heresies, he wrote that every church must agree with the Church of Rome because of its preeminent authority, stating that in Rome the apostolic tradition has always been preserved uncorrupted. The formula of Pope St. Hormisdas, 519 AD, signed by more than 250 Eastern bishops to end a major schism. This text stated, In the Apostolic See, the Catholic religion has always been kept unsullied. In it resides the whole and true strength of the Christian religion. The Council of Chalcedon, 451 AD. When Pope St. Leo the Great's doctrinal letter, the Tome of Leo, was read to the Council Fathers defining the two natures of Christ, the entire assembly of bishops cried out, Peter has spoken through Leo. They accepted the Pope's document as the final, absolute standard of orthodoxy. 3. The medieval and scholastic synthesis. By the Middle Ages, theologians explicitly formulated what had been practiced for centuries. St. Thomas Aquinas, 13th century, taught in the Summa Theologiae that formulating a final creed belongs strictly to the authority of the sovereign pontiff, so that a universal doubt may not tear the church apart. St. Robert Bellarmine, 16th century. As discussed earlier, Bellarmine spent his entire life demonstrating that the Pope cannot err when binding the universal church on matters of faith and morals, a position he defended centuries before Vatican I met. Why was it only defined in 1870? The 19th century did not invent the doctrine. It forced its formal definition due to the rising tide of secularism, liberalism, and Gallicanism, the political movement arguing that national kings or local councils had more authority over the church than the Pope. Pope Pius IX convoked the First Vatican Council to establish a definitive, unshakable anchor for Catholic unity. The Council explicitly limited the scope of infallibility to protect it from being misunderstood. It declared that a pope is not infallible in his personal opinions, his political choices, his scientific knowledge, or his daily conversation. He is only protected by the Holy Spirit under very narrow, specific conditions. 1. When he speaks ex cathedra from the chair of Peter in his official capacity as supreme pastor. 2. To the universal church. 3. Defining a matter of faith or morals. 4. Intending to permanently bind the consciences of all believers.
Your Excellency, was papal infallibility invented in 1870? No. Vatican I defined what the Church had believed since the Apostles.
Conclusion. The claim that papal infallibility is a fabrication is a position held by Protestants, secular historians, and the Old Catholics who left the Church in 1870. For a true Catholic, the definition at Vatican I was the natural, logical crystallization of 1,800 years of consistent Christian tradition. Without an infallible, visible authority to definitively declare what is true and what is false, Christian doctrine dissolves into subjective, endless private interpretations, the very theological chaos that traditionalists are fighting against.
Your Excellency, was papal infallibility invented in 1870? No. Vatican I defined what the Church had believed since the Apostles.